All right, we're live. Great. All right. I already got one viewer. Amish, thank you for joining. I don't know which Amish bear it is. I know a couple Amish bears.
Amish bear it is.
Couple Amish
Amish bear it is.
Oh, why is this? Hold on.
Amish bear.
Just some brief technical difficulties. Let's make sure that it's working now. I had a couple of windows open. Hello, Carrie. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited about today's stream. I think this will be a really good podcast for everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Radical Souls podcast. I'm your host, Amelie. I also go by Copper. So if you hear people call me Copper, it's a nickname. And so they're referring to me. I hope everyone is having a wonderful holiday season. Like, we had so much fun last week, my son and I. So that was really great. And we had a nice podcast last week. So we'll continue that going on here this week. And we have a really cool thing. I really love talking about this. I have my lab coat. So you guys know that I'm serious. I posted that I'm not a doctor, but I have a lab coat. So you can trust me. It's just funny. So there's a lot to go over with emotional intelligence, and we are going to just deep dive and explore each of these pieces. We'll start with the self, and then we'll move to the others, emotional intelligence, and really just kind of deep dive into these. So there's 26 things that are on my list, and if you have any questions and you're watching live, please feel free to put any responses, any questions while we're talking about it, and then we can have an open discussion about it. So really encourage you guys to do that. I think it makes it really nice to be able to have those discussions. Okay, so I have 3 pages of notes. So what are emotions? Like, we've all experienced emotions, and a lot of us may have had extreme situations when we were younger where we almost were told not to have emotions, not to cry, not to feel sad, not to feel angry, like all these negative emotions, like put on a happy face, get through it, you know, be a little hard, don't really honor those feelings. And those things almost come back to bite us. And so, um, as we get older, there is a disconnect between our feelings and or emotions and what we're supposed to be do to become adults. And because of this disconnect, I think it makes it really difficult for some people to find their purpose, to connect into healthy relationships, whether it's with a partner or with a friend or with coworkers. They have a hard time um, understanding like their feelings and the feelings of others. So emotional intelligence is when you have a good awareness and management of yourself, and then you have an awareness and are able to manage other people's emotions as it relates to you. And so when you do that, that is where emotional intelligence comes in, and you're starting to see it's gaining a lot of popularity as we go into careers. So this is something where maybe you're taking your boss is like, I need you to take some courses, and you go and you find some courses. Some of them could say tact, diplomacy, Negotiation is another. Uh, Once you get really good at this emotional intelligence, like negotiating becomes a lot easier, especially if you're feeling like maybe you have a little bit of self worth. And we'll kind of go over some of the pieces here. I'm trying to think of some other ones, just things in relating to other people at work. So you'll get a lot of this stuff as you're in a career, and um, businesses and careers are fine. Or corporations and businesses are finding that it's really important for for their employees to have these really healthy emotional, um, almost an emotional foundation, or being really stable in their emotions, because it helps, one, maintain people at work, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. And two, it helps them to relate to their customers, their vendors. I think a customer is not just somebody that's in retail buying something; it's anybody who is your upline or your downline that you're doing something for. So that is when I think customer, that's what I'm thinking of. I always think of everyone that I'm doing a service for as my customer. And so this is like I'm a buyer, so I'm kind of in the middle. I buy things for the production line. I also buy things for the office, and I treat each one of those people as my customer. And so by viewing it that way, it makes it a lot easier for me to relate. Okay, how would I want to be treated if I was them? And so that's how I kind of go about my day. So emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, I guess they call it EQ. It's EI, EQ, is different from the intelligence quotient, which is more analytical, and you have the problem solving abilities, and so those are a little bit more, I would say, masculine, whereas the emotional stuff is a little bit more feminine. It's a lot more chaotic. There's not a lot of super strong structure in it. It's a little bit more flowy, whereas you won't almost have this rigidity when it comes to the masculinity of like thinking about something. So I always think about, thinking of up here in your head versus emotions are really down here in your belly, and they're kind of distributed through your heart. So we have that. So the heart is definitely a really strong brain muscle that we have. And I did a Facebook post earlier today, or no, yesterday, saying love is the most powerful technology that we have, which is true. And so that is a part of an emotional extension of who you are. And that's why I feel very strongly that when we discover these emotional emotions and how to navigate them healthily, then um, we can kind of deal with some of the trauma that we've experienced, because everyone has trauma, it doesn't matter. um, Trauma that we've experienced, and move from, if you're in a position of fear, doubt, worry, lack of self-worth, into a where you feel a little bit more worthy, that you can kind of accelerate from where you feel maybe feeling stuck. So got Hobbit bears here, welcome. Okay, so this is broken up into four quadrants, and so we'll go over the self first. And the self, is this is going to be starting self management or knowledge, like how you are aware of yourself, and how you hold yourself. So the first thing is just emotional self awareness. What does that look like? This is recognizing emotions and the effects of your emotions. So let's say that um, somebody leaves a bunch of dishes and they're not thinking about you, they're just whatever. They leave a bunch of dishes in the sink and it's been a couple days and you just keep on looking at it. And maybe you start to get a little like irritated or angry. Just feeling those feelings of, okay, why am I feeling this way about the situation? Is it really, um, is the effect really worth me having that? So a really strong emotionally aware person is going to say, wow, that this situation, it has me feeling this way. And um, then they can kind of bear on some of the other emotional intelligence keys that they have to say, what do I do about this situation? How can I resolve the situation? Um, and do it in love, because we want to be, I mean, I hope that we would all want to be in a position where we are loving, and exuding love towards our neighbor. So emotional self-awareness is that recognition of how those emotions and effects happen, like the causative effects of your emotions. So maybe you fall in love with somebody, and maybe there's the feeling's not mutual, and so you have this, kind of irritated feeling, or just feeling of abandonment. Maybe some of that stuff kind of starts coming up, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like, this keeps on occurring. How do I get out of it? How do I get to the next level where I'm not feeling that this is keeping me down and stuck in whatever level it is? So the next part of self management, or awareness, is accurate self assessment. So I try to be as detailed about whatever emotion I'm feeling, and not just say, "Oh, mad, sad, happy, um, joyful," whatever it is. I try to be a little bit more expressive in whatever emotion it is. And so part of this is knowing what your strengths and your limits are. So I like to have a little sliding scale of emotions. So I like to start with, if it's angry, like, is it really angry, or is it outside of that? So having this knowledge of how you're feeling. So sometimes I'll get tired. I'll get really tired, and so I'll feel exhausted. And that's my feeling. I'm exhausted. And people are asking me, "Oh, you want to do this? Do you want to do that?" And so I have to decide, okay, am I going to say yes to that, or am I going to say no to that? So my limit might be saying, I have to say no to that, even though I want to say yes to it. I have to say no to it to honor my feeling of exhaustion. And being able to do that, some people have a hard time doing that, because there is a story in their head where, if I don't say yes to everything, it's a people pleaser situation. If I don't say yes to everything, then people are going to view me in a certain way. And we really want to be honoring um, ourselves and our limits, because we have a choice in how much we can give of ourselves. Um, so Hobbit Bear says, I always like this saying, be effective, not affected. If something bothers me, I try my best to take charge and try not to get mad at someone, because I'm the only one who can control my emotions. And so that is a perfect exhibition of how you would be really knowledgeable of what your limits are, recognizing your emotions, and knowing what the effects are and who's responsible for it. So that's a testament of a really highly emotional intelligence, as far as when it comes to yourself. Like, you probably scale really high on the chart. That's a high level of emotional awareness, self-awareness. So then we move into personal power. So personal power is an interesting one. So this is the sense of self-worth and capabilities, self confidence, assertiveness. This is where you know who you are, and what doesn't matter what anybody says. They can say, "Oh, you're this way, you're that way." It's not going to affect you. You're basically like this pillar of, I know who I am. I have a strong foundation and understanding of who I am, and nothing is going to break me from that. And a lot of people really struggle with this. Me included. This is one of the harder parts of self management and knowledge that I struggle with. So for a long time, I was the the people pleaser, the person who didn't say no, they just wanted to serve others. And it's not always the easiest to get out of, especially if there are stories from your childhood that you haven't addressed, that maybe you're not aware of, that are affecting you as an adult. And so, part of this for me, this is how this rolls out, is I didn't have a father growing up, and so there wasn't really anybody that was telling me like, "You're worth it." You're that I could hear, right? "You're worth it. You're special. You're capable." Um, and helped develop that inner confidence that I had. For whatever reason, I lacked that confidence, and um, didn't want to say anything to make anybody feel a certain way. I just wanted them to be happy. And I almost was hiding who I was because I wasn't any of those things. So it was almost a shield. This people pleasing is a shield to protect you from actually diving into your emotions. Um, Self-worth is one of the places where I target the most because I think personal power is super, super important, especially if you're going to be, I like to relate everything to business. If you're going to be in the business of negotiating. So this includes negotiating and buying a house. This includes negotiating and buying a car. This is anything that you're negotiating. This, it doesn't have to be big ticket items. These are just a couple examples of things that we might commonly or not so commonly experience. Um, and part of us might want to give in and just say, nope, that's not it. But negotiating for a job. So, negotiating for a job, negotiating for more money in your job, you have this inner confidence, the self confidence that says, I'm making um, $50,000 a year. I should be making $60,000 a year, and having that self-confidence and knowing what you're worth, yourself, your worth, like my abilities, I know that I'm worth this much. If you want to keep me, this is how you do it. Um, and going to your boss or to whomever HR and saying, I'm making this much. I'd really like to be making this much. What can we do about that? And if they start to come back at you, it's not buckling down because you're so self-confident that you're able to say, well, I'm worth this much, and I've gotten offers for this. I'd really like to stay with the company, but um, if I'm not being compensated properly, it's not worth it for me to stay here, to remain here. And a lot of the times, this is probably one of the easiest places to negotiate and get your worth is by being able to know, like, here's my ability, here's what I'm worth here at this job. Um, and any good employer is going to recognize that, see it, because a lot of the times they're not looking at it, they're looking at the bottom line of whatever they're doing in their day to day. And so it's really up to you as an employee, if you are an employee working under somebody, to go and not demand, but just let them know, like, hey, this is what I do for you, this is what I should be getting compensated. What kind of things can we work on to get me to that point? Carrie says, I struggle with this part a lot. I'm not entirely certain which part, because we kind of talked a little bit about that, but this is a big struggle for a lot of people that have. Uh, I think a lot of people have this idea, and it really is a scarcity mindset that if I do this, no, they're going to look at me in a different way. Like, I'm going to be looked at in a certain way, and or a lot of women will do this, and Jordan Peterson kind of mentioned this a lot when I first started listening to him in 2017. He would say women don't negotiate for themselves. That's why they're getting paid less. And it's true. A woman is thinking, if I do these things, if I go above and beyond my job, my boss will recognize what I'm doing and they'll compensate for me for it. They'll compensate me for my the extra that I'm putting in. They're recognizing that, they're seeing that. And the reality is, like, a lot of people don't recognize it. They don't even think about it. You're the one that's thinking about how much you're getting paid for, whatever you're doing. Um, okay. Yep, you have to go where you're appreciated. I love the Bears because everyone encourages hard work and doesn't BS anyone. Yeah, and but even with that kind of code, it's it's unwise to just rely on that. Like, being able to speak for yourself in this confidence, self-worth understanding way is the best way that you're your best or worst cheerleader. So you're your best and worst negotiator. If you're not going to the negotiation table, everything's a negotiation. So I'll tell you guys a story. I was at my last job. This is before I quit, but so I've been working in supply chain. I work as a buyer. So a buyer is the one that issues all the purchase orders. They buy all the stuff, the maintenance, repairs, and operations stuff. Typically, they buy basically everything that runs a corporation or a business. That's what buyers do. So when we have to go to new vendors, if we have to go to our old vendors and negotiate price, we're looking at, okay, what is our spend, and what kind of percentage are we trying to save? So knowing what percentage that we want to save is great. So I'm a buyer. I have negotiation skills, and I was working, and I had negotiated my way up to a certain pay, and I still thought I was worth a lot more. And I was on the way to earning probably even more than what I was getting at the time. And um, I was experiencing burnout, and burnout is real. Like, I worked so much, and I thought, oh, I'm working all this extra, so they'll see that I'm worth that compensation that they're giving me. And then when I get my next promotion, my title promotion, then I'll be making even more. So this will be great. But I was working like nonstop, like overtime. So I started burning out to the point where I couldn't even do any of the work that I was supposed to be doing. I would sit there and look at the computer and just like glaze over. Um, so I'm like glazing over, and I'm seeing this. I'm like, what is going on with me? Why can't I perform the way that I have been used to? And um, it got to a certain point to where it was just really overwhelming. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I didn't realize I was in burnout at the time. And then so my manager, her and the HR assistant, they bring me into the office, and they're like, we're giving you a performance, like a poor performance evaluation. So we need to fix this before whatever. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking at, and there's a point to this, sitting there and I'm looking at the paperwork. It's got all this assessment stuff on it. Like, how can you be better? How can you get the work done that you need to? And you're failing or whatever. And I'm like, I've been working like, 50 to 60 hours a week on average for the last 5 years, while still, going to school and going above and beyond, not calling in sick. I think I called in sick maybe twice or 3 times in 6 years. So that's days, 2 or 3 days called in sick, like on PTO. Didn't take like a lot of vacations. And so I'm sitting here and I'm looking at it, at this paperwork, and all I can see is what is it called? Um, it's basically, I can't remember the term, but it's basically like, you don't have a contract, so you are basically consenting to whatever the work circumstances are. Um, there's a term for it now. It'll probably come to me later, but um, right. It's basically where like they can fire you or tell you you're let go at any time, and you can be fired or let go at any time. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, you have no obligation to be here. Like you're consenting to this relationship. And so I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, like they can just fire me any day. It doesn't even matter. They wouldn't even think twice about it. And or I could just leave at any time. And I so I'm just sitting there and that's all I can see. I'm like, should I just quit my job? So I put I put a month notice in. I was really kind. Um, I put a month notice in because I just knew that I couldn't like perform what they were asking me because I had been so burnt out. My brain was just gush. Like there was no way that I could do it. So I took a couple years off, sold my house. I took a couple years off and I went and visited a lot of people to help relax me and get me out of the stress situation that I was in. Um, self-worth, anger, emotions. So yeah, I'm working on being more of a bear in farming. Yes. So I did a lot of gardening and farming. I have a lot of skills. And it was really frustrating to be in the position. Like, I love this career. I love being a buyer. I love negotiating. I love going to work and being able to like, okay, I got to get this here and then have fun. Like that's my job now. And I asked for that and I asked for a higher compensation. I was like, this is how much I'll work for. This is what I expect from you. And they gave me what I asked because I asked for it. I sat there in confidence. I was like, well, I'm ready to walk away from the negotiation if I need to, because this is, um, I wish I could remember the term. I'm really embarrassed that I can't remember it, but yes, so I knew what I was worth when I went back to work. So it'd been a couple years since I had been in a corporate career job. And I went into my interview and they were like, well, why do you want to work here? And I was like, well, I know that I can do the job. I know that I'm capable of doing it. But I wanna be in a fun office environment. I don't wanna be stuck at a desk 9 to 5. I wanna be able to have a relationship with people at work. I wanna be able to talk and go, and if I need to go and take care of my family stuff, I don't wanna have to worry about clocking in, clocking out. I need it to be fun. I need it to be relaxed. I'll perform. And I made good on my part, and they made good on their part. So, um, that's part of knowing what you're worth, knowing um, what your capabilities are, recognizing those capabilities. So, this is part of the management. And then with confidence, asking for what you want. So, we can do this in our day to day. You can do this in your relationship. I don't want to be in a relationship that I feel like I'm being condemned or I have to walk around eggshells. I'm just going to refuse it. And this is not just like intimate partnerships. This is friendships. If a friendship is not a give and take, and there's disrespect, then I'm not going to be in it. And I'm going to voice that. I don't want to be in a situation where I have this feeling of trepidation to come to you at any time when I have something sensitive, or if I have something that I want to share that's on my heart that I need to like just say as a testimony. I don't want anybody to fix it. I just want to lay it out. Then I'm going to find a person that I'm safe with, that I can share those things with, that they know I'm not coming from a place of I'm a victim. I'm just coming from a place of I need to talk about this. I don't want to fix it. I just need to tell somebody. And that's part of like that self-assessment, knowing what your limits are. I can't have this in my mind. I need to talk about it with somebody, and you're the person that I'm going to talk to about it. And being there for other people. So we'll talk about others, but um everything is a negotiation and choice in how you act in situations. Um, absolutely. Everything. You we'll talk about it later, but yeah, everything is a negotiation for sure. And when you recognize that is the negotiation, it's part of that temptation, the consent. So what are you being tempted with? What are you consenting to? And once you start to kind of recognize these things, then it changes the way that you see it. And when you see it from a different perspective, you don't get suckered into things that you don't want to do. So I've been like in places where um, I wanted to have a service performed on my vehicle. And I go in and um, it kind of feels shady, but I don't say anything. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, that was a really bad deal. I shouldn't have done that. So, not to say that I have had poor negotiations, I have, but now I'm really cautious about, okay, what am I doing and what is the result? Now I'm more aware of what I'm doing in action and then how I feel about it. Because a lot of the times that intuition is going to tell you. Okay, where are we here? I've experienced spiritual burnout twice in my life. It's no fun and takes so much to recover. Yeah, it took me 2 years, a little over 2 years to recover from the burnout that I experienced from work. And the interesting thing is, like, when I was overworking, I traded an addiction of drinking and drugs for working. And, so instead of, like, escaping my emotions with drinking and kind of being out of it, I was trading it for working all the time. So now I have this is a healthy addiction, right? At least I'm working and making money, but it really isn't worth it. And it gets you to a point of burnout, and burnout is very, very difficult to get through. Um, if I would have known what I know now, then I probably could have done it a little faster. But it's really difficult, and that's why I've been doing my coaching courses or mentor courses to help people that are in burnout, that may be in the middle of it or on the verge of experiencing it, to put themselves in a self-love situation instead of hiding from their emotions. So I would say I was not being very emotionally intelligent when I was doing all the workaholism. Um, and now that I know what the results were, I know that that wasn't worth the trade off. So that was a bad deal for me, a bad negotiation. Okay, and um, Hobbit says sometimes no amount of money can be worth over stress. No amount of money is worth the stress. No. So definitely look at what the job details and how much you're willing to work at that job to be a part of that stress. So, for example, Amazon has this, they're like, oh, we're a great place to work. You can bring your dog to work. But the amount of work that they have the people do is almost unbearable. In fact, I've spoken with people that worked for Amazon and they can only sustain it for a year. And then after that, it was really, really difficult for them to get back into the swing of just being a person. Burnout is really, really hard on your body. So it's a lot of stress, a lot of worry, a lot of um, thinking, a lot of deadlines. And so if you compound that with just even, so you have your work stress and then you have your personal stress, like compounding that, like it's almost unsustainable and it's very difficult to get out. uh Hobbit says Faustian deal. Absolutely. I don't think we remember that as much. um Carrie says, I call off 5 times a year. I need my personal days. Yeah, definitely take your personal days. Don't think that you have to be there. um I would definitely recommend taking time off and take weeks, like a week at a time or 2 weeks if you can, to just like get away from it. Don't answer your phone, like don't be a part of it. Just really pull yourself out of there. A lot of So I worked at a bank, and the bank would say you need to you have to take a week off at least once a year. And that was just because if you're there all the time and just overworking, then you're more likely to be a part of some nefarious activities. But so it pulled them away from it though. So if you stare at a computer screen, you got to be treated like a person, not just a computer. Yeah, and a lot of places do that. But I do believe that the economy is changing to where it's not a GDP economy where the money is the most important thing. Um, that um, uh, well-being is at the forefront of it. So find a place that cares about the well-being of their employees because they're going to have this um, underlying understanding that emotional intelligence is important. So, and oh my gosh, it's been 30 minutes. We've been talking about the first three. Might have to make a part two. Um, yeah, it's awesome. I ended up having a heart attack from it. I barely made it, needed CPR and shock. Yeah, I was going to, like, I'm just saying, I went to urgent care. I've had panic attacks, anxiety attacks at work because like it was so much and I was trying to like hold it all in. So yeah, burnout is serious. Like um I can't stress it enough, like how health wise it's very serious for you to just like dismiss it. Definitely take care of it when it's happening. Okay, so that is self management as far as knowledge of how you're feeling, how you understand yourself, the core foundation of who you are. As we move into the next part of this, it's going to be self management, but managing those emotions. So, how you manage those emotions. So, the first one is behavior self control. Do you keep your emotions in check? Are you impulsive? Are you able to keep those in check? So, a lot of the times we'll see something and then, like, we'll just get really angry. Like, so you'll be watching reels and you'll see something like horrific happen. And then you just like get this really intense feeling of, I want to protect that person, um, where it's just this impulse of like, oh, that, or maybe there's an impulse of, um, oh, I just want to help this person. Like that, that makes me cry. Like I watch reels that make me cry all the time. Um, so uh, it's really important to have that self control of how you're behaving. So, are you going to fly off the handle? Obviously, you don't want to do that in a workplace. Are you always crying or complaining at work because things aren't going your way? These kind of things you kind of look at as part of that self control. How are you managing that? How that looks. The next one is integrity. So integrity is, we've heard this. Integrity is meaning maintaining high standards of honesty and ethics. And so a lot of us, I think it was uh, Hobbit was saying that, you know, in our homesteading community, that there's a high degree of integrity, and that is true. And so while we can say, oh, okay, we can just like let them do whatever because they're going to have that integrity, it's still important for you to manage your integrity and doing what you say you're going to do and follow that oath. And also, so being honest and acting with ethics. Um, and so that's kind of something that's really strong in that community, but maybe not so much in other communities. So maybe you work in an environment where there's a salesman, and that salesman is acting unethically, or maybe an accountant is acting unethically. You can kind of see this, but for the purpose of what we're looking at right now, we're looking at the self. And so it's yourself acting with integrity. And I think that's important. My mom always um, was so like piercing about that. She always wanted us to know what it meant to be in integrity. And from age 5, I think she had her own business. So I've always had that. like being in a retail environment, doing wholesale, and then now working in a corporate environment where I'm, well, it's corporate entrepreneur environment where I have that understanding of being a. I prefer corporate environments, oddly, over like small businesses. It's just kind of funny that that's how it is, but um, I just like the having that structure. And sometimes it feels like some businesses don't have structure, and I just need it to thrive. Hi, Jonah. Thank you for joining. Jerusha's in. Hello, lovely. Okay. All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh no, it's Thursday night." I know it's ladies' night. It's ladies' night over tonight. Okay. So the next part of managing your emotions is innovation and creativity. Like, how are you um, at actively pursuing new approaches, new ideas, and it's almost like part of that problem solving that is a little bit more analytical. But here we're doing it in a way of um, maybe internally, like innovating and being creative. And this is just a lovely portion of it. I think that it's so important to be nice and creative and do something that's creative, because when you're just in one side of maybe problem solving and doing things and it's super logical, a lot of the times that other side of you that's creative and just wants to have beauty around you, you just kind of forget about it, which is what happened to me. I was working so much that I wasn't I wasn't making anything that was beautiful, and and because of that, it almost stifled that part of me. And so I really encourage you, if you are in like engineering or if you're doing what I was doing um, in procurement, or if you're in like accounting, do something that's like hobby related. Have some really solid hobbies that um, you can activate, like that part of you, that innovative part of you that's going to make you look at things differently. The next one is initiative and bias for action. Capper needs the 9 to 5 or she'll turn to the firewater. No, it's true. Actually, it's kind of a little bit true. Hobbit said, "Yeah, it's fine. It's a fine lineup. You got to be about business, um, but also have to have people around you that care for you." Yeah, and that's part of that negotiation that we were talking about, is making sure that the environment is something that you can thrive in. So initiative and bias for action. This is the this is a part where you're ready to act in an opportunity. So when I was like, okay, now, so this is the part where you take action. This is the part where you start something new. This is the part where you come up with an idea and you do something uh, to grow that or further that idea. So one example is, I was like, man, I really want to start a podcast. I really want to start a podcast. I don't know what to do though. Like, where do I start? And so I kind of like tiptoed around it for about 6 months, and I was like, I don't know, like, what's it going to be? Um, just really putting a lot of thought into it and not taking any action. So when I took the initiative, I was like, okay, well, here, I'll just get it started. And I saw an opportunity. I just wanted to be um, at least be present with whatever community wanted to have this information and be able to present it to them in an easy access format. And so YouTube is obviously a very easy format to use, and um, everyone has it, everyone has access to it. And so it was really easy for me to basically flip the switch and, okay, here's my action. I'm ready to act on it. Here's the topics that I can do. I can always have content. I always have something to talk about. And this is how often I'm going to do it. And then so I can take it from there. And then if I need to accelerate it or decelerate it, it's fine to take action either way. So it's okay to take action and initiative to say, I'm quitting my job. I don't want to be treated like crap anymore. Like this job is terrible. And we see that all the time where people are like, oh, this job is awful. I'm not getting paid enough. I'm, complaining, complaining, complaining. It's like, okay, you're experiencing scarcity. The labor market is not scarce if you're ready to take action. So understanding what that looks like, where the opportunities are, this is a part of emotional intelligence. And it almost it almost sounds funny, like it should be more of the IQ part of it, but no, it's the EQ part of it. How am I going to take action to change my life so that I don't feel stuck and I feel like I'm going somewhere now? Those are some feelings that we can kind of work through. Take care, Amish. Um, so being ready to act in those opportunities is super super important, even if it's saying I'm taking a break from this for this period of time because I need that break. um that's a piece of action, that is caring for yourself enough to understand that your emotions mean more than giving yourself too much when you're just going to burn yourself out. So there is this delicate line that we're working with. uh Um, so the next portion of this is achievement drive. So this is defined as striving to meet a standard of excellence. So this is kind of self-explanatory, but so the achievement drive is looking at something. Okay, I want to do this, and I want to do it the best to the best of my ability. And so being able to perform in a way that is better than maybe the rest, if that's the way you want to perceive it, but at least the best that you can give it. So understanding that and putting that forward as you're working through um, a lot of your actions, because this is coming after action. Not that it's necessarily a successor of that taking action, but it is important for you to have this standard of excellence about what you do, because it will make you feel good about what you're doing. And that's really what we're driving for here, is having fulfillment, purpose, and understanding that the things that you are working to create are things of beauty. And um, I don't think there's many people that would disagree with that, but it's part of it. The next part is realistic optimism. So realistic optimism is expecting success. So it's taking that action and then expecting that it's going to be successful, no matter, even if you fail. So you see these setbacks as they're manageable. Okay, this, I'm going forward and doing this, but I'm experiencing a stop in wherever I'm going. Now I have to kind of pull back, look at the situation. Am I doing something? Can I do something different? Can I use some of that innovation and creativity part of myself to get from this setback into something that is going to push me forward to that end goal? It also deals with persisting and achieving goals despite obstacles or setbacks. It's just a nicer way, maybe a little bit more clear way of explaining that achievement drive with that realistic optimism. These are almost like a power combo of having an idea, taking an action to initiate it, um, doing things constantly to the best of your ability, and then doing it with an idea of optimism, like this is going to happen. This podcast is going to be successful. People are going to listen to this and they will be uplifted. They're going to be educated. Um, They're going to experience something that's going to elevate them. That is part of my vision of whatever this podcast turns out to be. Right now, that's what it is. And my achievement drive is every time coming with content that is going to captivate my audience. And then the optimism is that no matter what, like even if I say something off the wall funny, that people are always going to come back despite, whatever the numbers are. Maybe somebody dislikes some content that I put out, which is possible, but that's a manageable setback for me. I'm going to continue going on. Maybe I do this and then a year later, I'm like, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't believe that anymore. I'm not going to sit there and like, oh, maybe I should take it off. Like, that is who I was in that moment. And so a year from now, if I have elevated and grown, I'm showcasing how I got to that next level. And I think that's important because we need to see failure as a part of that success. Woo, page one. Page one is done. Okay, so our next one is resilience. Now, resilience is that perseverance. It's a really strong emotion. It's a perseverance and intelligence in face of setbacks. So, this resilience is looking at whatever your situation is and continuing through it. So, not only is it taking that optimism, that realistic optimism that I'm going to be successful because I'm going to continue to work, the resilience is really pushing through it really fast. So the higher your resilience is, the faster you're going to get to your successes because you're going to be using um, all the skills that you have. And then that perseverance is just kind of pushing through no matter what the obstacle, no matter what's stopping you. And there's a lot of things that can stop you if you think that, oh, I'm not educated enough to do that. I think this all the time. Sometimes I hit my own walls of like, "Oh, I'm not enough to do this." And, that's a story that I'm telling myself. Perseverance is, really looking at that setback that I'm placing on myself, like it's my own personal setback. It's not even anything that anybody's doing. It's just a false belief that I have about myself and moving through that, transmuting it into something of, yeah, no, I am going to be successful. Yeah, people are going to see value in this. People um, are going to gain knowledge from it. um, Carrie's my one of my biggest cheerleaders. Carrie and Jerusha are one of my biggest cheerleaders. They're my biggest cheerleaders. Okay. So resilience, I think we've all heard this, but that is also a part of this self management, managing emotions, part of emotional intelligence. So the next one is stress management, and this is working calmly under stress and pressure. So I have really good stress management. People will be astounded to believe that I even get stressed out. Like it takes a lot for me to get really, really stressed out, to even show how stressed out I am. And a lot of the times the stress isn't even mine. It's just the stress of the room. So sometimes at work, it does get a little chaotic. It gets a little stressful. People are wanting all this stuff at once. And I'm like, I was not busy yesterday. Why are you guys coming to me today? It just happens that way and it's fine. But I remain calm and I look at it. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling stressed. Is it really my stress? No, it's not my stress. Um, and so I can kind of remove myself from that stress management of like, okay, this is just a feeling in the room and it will go away eventually. And I can just continue on. I'm not going to let this stop me from going on. Some people buckle when it comes to being under stress. It's almost paralyzing. And so understanding like that paralyzing fear or whatever it is when you're in that stress moment, um, maybe it takes a little extra work to figure out why do I get this way when I feel stressed out? Why do I shut down? What stories am I telling myself? What is going on in my mind? What past experience is adding to this situation where I'm just like frozen. So that does happen to people. And I don't really relate too much with that because I've always just been the action taker in those situations. And so I've really worked to kind of hone in my feelings and not like that impulse control that we were talking about earlier. Um, I consider you a very resilient person. Yeah, I do have a lot of resilience. Um, Obviously, there's always room to grow, but yeah. Let's see. Cool. Okay. So stress management is important. I think it's so important when we're looking at that burnout experience, that burnout of being fatigued, tired, depressed, unable to work, unable to perform the way that you're normally able to. Stress management comes into to play. It's super important. So maybe you need to talk about some of the things that you're stressing you out. Maybe you need to say no. Take that action to say no. I can't do it. I'm unable to do it. I don't have the energy. I really wish that I could. However, it's going to be the cost is going to be too high on me emotionally, and I really need my energy for doing whatever the next thing is. Um, some people have a tendency to kind of take on all of the stress uh, because they're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do all these extra things that maybe aren't outlined in your job. Maybe they're not necessarily things that you should be doing. Maybe it's something that you should be sharing with somebody else. So if you're in a partnership and you're doing a majority of the work and it's like it almost feels uneven, maybe having that conversation of, hey, look, I have all this extra stuff, is there anything that you can help me to take off the pressure of getting all this stuff done so that I can do whatever I need to do and get those things done? Is there any possible way that we can share whatever this is to relieve some of this pressure? So having those conversations confidently and not being in an attacking way, but just being confident about those stressors that um, are coming up and being able to voice that is part of that emotional intelligence. Okay, how are we doing so far? Is Jesus still your Lord and Savior? Absolutely. Add you on the app. Okay, so the next part of this is personal agility. So this is readily, willingly, rapidly, effectively anticipating and adapting to change. So when we're facing things that are difficult, being able to move through these things, um, the agility is being able to kind of bounce back and forth with your feelings and being aware that kind of working through these stressful things and being able to voice what those things are and really looking at anticipating it. So once you can start anticipating it, maybe it's easier for you to anticipate others than it is for yourself, and so kind of looking at those two things and working through those is going to be helpful, kind of seeing others do it and then working on it within yourself. Maybe you're just more adept to understanding their agilities and seeing their gifts and maybe not so much yourself. And this is possible. But all of these things are possible. And then the final one is intentionality, thinking or acting on purpose and deliberately acting. So intentionality is thinking about what is the purpose of what I'm doing and how can I do this deliberately? How can I set this intention and have it come to fruition? And and so we talked about a lot of different things. So I set an intention. I'm going to do a podcast. Set an intention. It's not going to be something that's going to be a daily thing. That'll be too stressful. It'll be too much pressure for me to come up with topics. Um, I'm going to be on here and maybe somebody comes on and their intention is to be as rude as possible. And so my personal agility is going to be accepting that, respecting where they're at, and adapting to whatever the situation is. It wasn't on my notes to deal with that. My intention was, here's the content that I'm going to be providing. How does that fit with the audience, and do they appreciate that? So this ends the 13 pillars, or whatever you want to call them, of the self-awareness. So self-awareness, we're at an hour, perfect. Self-awareness is really important. It doesn't necessarily mean that you understand the others' awareness of where they're at in their emotions, um, but it at least gets you to where you need to be. Awareness of others, we'll start talking about it, is is going to be a little bit more relatable. Maybe you've had more experiences in these things, so as your experience with others is going to be important too. So this is when I started talking. We were talking about that tact, the diplomacy, being able to face situations, um, and understanding where you stand. That your pillar is not going to be falling. That your confidence is not going to get hit. That um, you're going to exhibit all of these things in yourself, and being able to recognize these in others is going to it's going to show up a little bit differently, but there's going to be some similarities. Okay. Okay, so the first part of others is part of that awareness that we were talking about. We had self-awareness, where we were talking about emotional uh sorry, wait a minute. uh, emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, and that personal power. Those three pieces of this are part of that self-awareness, and now we're going to be looking at others awareness. So in comparing this, we've got the first thing. This is a really popular one. People will probably have heard this quite a bit. It's gained in a lot of popularity, but it's empathy. So empathy is sensing others' feelings and perspectives and taking an active interest in their concerns. So this is somebody comes up to you and they're like, I don't like the way that you're acting. I don't like the way that you're talking. I don't like the topic that you're talking about. And that's fine for them to be where they're at with that. Um, and they can, if that's where they're at and that's where their mindset is, then that's fine. They can disagree with you. One thing before I really dive into the others awareness is one thing that I've learned about emotions is that whenever I experience emotions that maybe it's like I feel slighted or I feel treated unfairly, I really look at those things as, okay, why do I feel that way? This is part of that emotional self awareness. Why do I feel that way? So when somebody is acting in a certain way to me, of like, oh, you're this, you're that, and like pointing their finger at me, I'm really looking at, okay, why are you saying that? What is about your personal understanding of yourself that you're broadcasting or projecting this onto me? That what is am I pushing your buttons? Like there's something about me that pushes your buttons. Okay, is it really me, or is there something that you're not dealing with? So I take that's kind of the feeling of being an empathetic person, and really kind of putting yourself in their shoes of like, okay, like if I was on your in your shoes, how would I be viewing me? Is it really that big of a concern? Is this really a big deal that you're making it out to be? And so I really do look at like what are their concerns of how they're viewing this situation. Okay, and that moves us into situational awareness, which is reading a group's emotional currents and power relationships and sizing up a situation. So, one of the things that I like to say about situational awareness, maybe a lot of you who do have high empathy and really understand others, you're able to have more understanding of the situational awareness. So I used a lot of situational awareness when I was traveling by myself with my child across the country in a place that I'd never been before, meeting people that I'd never met before. I use situational awareness to kind of keep an eye on, okay, who's around me? Am I in danger? Um, you can kind of see this. So Vox Day came up. He's a podcaster, but he came up with a social sexual hierarchy, which um, is more for male situation, like male relationships, and but it gave you an idea of like how these people worked with their power relationships. So is it an alpha, is it a bravo, or is it a delta? Like, what kind of person am I working with? You're able to kind of look at the full situation and say, that's the leader, this is the guy that's going to help carry out the message, and then these are the guys that are just going to get the job done. Here's the guy that specializes in whatever the necessary need is. And so that's part of that situational awareness, is sizing up the situation, looking around the room and saying, okay, I know I can go talk to this person. There's something not right here. It feels like there's going to be a fight, like there's a tension in the air. Terrible hit social media. I'm more active on Instagram. um, yeah. Okay. Um, So the next part of the other awareness, and this is the first part of the other awareness, it's kind of a grouping, is service orientation. So this is anticipating, recognizing, and meeting the needs of others. Like, how are you when you go and meet somebody? Can you tell what they might need? Can you recognize what their needs are? Are you able to meet their needs? And if not, then how can you do that? How can you be of service to this person? And this is really important when you're dealing with, I mean, even in negotiation, it's important. So, um, you can do this with your people that you work with in your office, your department. You can do this with just the admin groups in general, or you can do this with the whole company, or just maybe production portion of it, maybe the servers or whatever it is. Oh, Pepe? Yes. Bajo. Yeah, so Pepe is my spirit frog. He's my homie. He drinks Rebel Joe though. So um so service orientation, situational awareness, empathy, these are all core factors of what emotional intelligence means, as far as when you're dealing with other people and their feelings, and kind of getting an understanding of where they're coming from and how you can meet their needs. So you're assessing them, you're aware of what's going on with them. You can almost feel a tension in the room, or you can feel a joy in the room. It just depends on what the situation is, and figuring out how you can be of service to those people. Emotional intelligence seems rare. It's actually more common than you would think. It's just, I think it's kind of an like emerging part of the psychological sciences, because IQ has been so important for X number of years, where you're getting all this how to problem solve. This just kind of looks at it from a different perspective. So it's still you're still working on some of the similar things, but it's just from a different perspective. And maybe your emotional intelligence is a little bit higher than your IQ, and you're able to use emotional intelligence to solve your problems, to get things done, and that's completely fine. Um, and both of them work. It's just being able to access both of them, or if you're really strong in one, like trying to strengthen the other. So I don't try to look at things as weaknesses. It's just like these are areas where I can improve. So I'm always looking at, how can I improve as a person? How can I improve and be better service to others, especially when it comes to myself? I always put myself on the back burner. So I almost look at selfishness and selflessness as the same thing, just on different spectrums. And so self-love is kind of in that middle portion where you're kind of pulled out of both of these like binaries. Young men don't have an understanding for sure. Well, hopefully this is helpful and engaging for people to listen to. I hope so, but you never know. Some people just don't vibe with it, and that's fine. I go into this and I just produce content that's digestible and I think helpful to people. Okay. All right. So some of these things are going to be things that you may have heard of, especially if we work in a corporate environment. Some of these things you're going to have heard before. So communication is something we've all heard of. I'm doing it right now. You guys are doing it right now. Communication is so important. So this is listening attentively. This is how you do it with emotional intelligence. Listening attentively and fostering an open dialogue. So having a conversation, not just talking to somebody, but having a conversation with them. Oh, okay. You don't like the content that I'm bringing. How does that make you feel? Why are you feeling that way? I'm really sorry that that happens. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to change the way that I talk or the content that I create just because you're uncomfortable with it. This is optional. You don't have to be here. And this is a free thing that I'm providing for people. This is a service that I'm providing for my community. I'm a very service oriented person. I have love for everyone. And while this is not the whole of everything that we are, this is an important thing to be aware of. Um, I think the reason why I'm so passionate about having emotional intelligence is when I started. So, if you guys listened to my last stream, I was talking about listening to this radio broadcast, and they were saying you can't feel your way into the kingdom of God. And I believed that for a long time until recently when I was like, no, that's not true. God loves us. He sacrificed for us. He gave his son for us. And he, that as I read the Bible, like he is jealous and he gets angry and doesn't want the love of his life to turn away from him. And so to say that this is like somehow against the kingdom of heaven, um, and or against God or somehow Luciferian, I'm like, how can you say that when we were designed this way? Like we have emotions, we have brains, we have hearts, we love, and we care about other people. Um, I think that having this ability to access our emotions is super important. So take it or leave it. But having the communication of saying, okay, you might think that emotions are that way, and that's fine. I just don't agree with that anymore. And I would prefer to grow in a way that I can exhibit joy, bliss, ecstasy, love, peace, and have this really genuine understanding of where people are and be able to communicate with them and to help them accelerate as well. Call me Bahu McBear. You're funny. Um, okay, so communication, we've all done it, but just having that open dialogue of being able to talk to people, knowing what to say, and knowing how to talk to others. So this is going to start tying into some of these other managing, maybe not managing others' emotions, but understanding how they are managing their emotions. So, interpersonal effectiveness is our next part of this. This is the part where you would probably find the courses that you're taking at your job. This is possessing tact. So tact is knowing what to say and when to say it. Diplomacy is being really neutral about the situation and not having that impulse control, controlling yourself, but being able to have that communication with somebody else, and not attack them, but really listen intently, because that was part um, of that empathy portion, was having an active interest in what their concerns were. So, and then interpersonal skills, like how you relate to others. So, this is something that interpersonal skills are so important when you're doing any business program, any business or job or whatever. Having those good interpersonal skills to be able to communicate with anyone. Well, you know what? Fred's kind of a jerk. He doesn't say the nicest things, but I have to work with Fred on a project. So, I'm going to use my interpersonal skills and not get worked up and not get offended and not whatever, and really try to hear what he has to say so that we can get this project done and meet our deadlines. And Fred is an imaginary person. Oh, you guys are so sweet. So, this is from the SEIP uh, self-assessment test that I took. These are just kind of different portions of emotional intelligence. So we started, the first 13 were the self-assessment, and then um and then the second part of it is other, um how you view others, and so there's also 13 portions of that as well. So this is knowing and relate, how to relate and build rapport with people. So this I've taken courses like this at corporate jobs. Mostly comes, it's like using tact and diplomacy to speak with people and communicate with them. So that's part of it. So just having a neutral position when you're dealing with people like that. Okay, we're powering through this. All right, so the next one is powerful influencing skills, wielding effective tactics for persuasion. So, we talked a lot about negotiation early on and how to negotiate for yourself at work. And so, having an ability to be persuasive and almost have this win-win situation, a win-win mindset. So, wielding effective tactics for persuasion can look um, okay, I have this goal. I would like to make more. So I would like to make, gave an example of, I'm making $50,000 a year and I'd like to make $60,000 a year. I think that my abilities, my capabilities, my abilities, the demonstration of work that I've done, would merit a pay increase. And so being able to come to your boss, because you're dealing with others now, and explain to them clearly, this is how this is what I've been doing. This is how I would like to be compensated for it. And you can do this annually. You can do this however you want. But being able to influence others by understanding where you're at and then where they're at. Maybe it can't go there. Okay, well, I do recognize that you have the abilities. You've demonstrated that you can come to work. You're able to fulfill these needs that we have at work, but maybe we're only able to give you a $5,000 raise instead of a $10,000. And so you can kind of sit back and forth. Okay, well, maybe I can get compensated in another way. I'll take the 5,000, but maybe there's other things that I can do that will help me to grow and still be challenged in my work, while still being happy and satisfied with it as well. All right, so conflict management is the next one. Conflict management is negotiating and resolving disagreements. And so I think people that work in a customer service environment may have to experience this a lot more, especially with like the uh, I don't even know where it came from, but the Karen meme where people are calling places and they're just acting very disagreeable, almost unable to speak. They're so angry. And so it's just really recognizing where they're at in that and being able to negotiate with them. Okay, I'm really sorry that that happened to you and that maybe you got passed on through the call center and now you're coming to me, but let's see what we can do to help resolve this situation. So conflict management is also another one of those things where I think a lot of these other awareness portions of emotional intelligence are going to come through from a corporate environment, that these ones will be the most common that you'll see. Told the copper would be here. Oh, I'm sorry that you guys feel that way. Well, I hope you guys do learn. Okay, so the next portion of this is inspirational leadership. So this is motivating, guiding, and gathering groups, articulating a clear vision for the future. So this is being able to see, okay, I have this group of people, um, maybe if it's a workplace, maybe we want to figure out how to save, 10% of our spend for the year. Maybe it's we have a vision of our workplace being a little bit more well-being thought of more with more well-being than it is like us making a bottom line. So being inspirational of that, like motivating people. Look, I know it's really tough right now. However, here's where our relief is going to be. And really looking at how we can get from um, where we're at, having this clear vision and being able to speak what that clear vision is and moving that group from there to a new place. Um, this is kind of really important, especially like with women. We really like to see our leaders have a really clear vision of where we're going. And if it gets clouded or foggy or whatever it is, then the motivation is not going to be there. I know that if I'm working for a boss, I'd much rather, okay, here's the vision of where we're going, and him or her. I prefer hymns, but to have this really clear vision of this is where we want to be, and this is how we're going to get there. And if you have any great ways of figuring out how to get there, that would be awesome. So, um, and then finding the proper people, so being inspirational enough to have everyone come along for the journey and meeting that goal for the future as a really nice as a leader is really nice. These are people that may be really charismatic, they're very articulate, they know how to speak to people. So being able to have that inspiration in your message and in your vision is going to be helpful, especially it doesn't have to be work. It could be like a husband leading his wife and or children. Just having this clear vision of here's where we're going to go. Maybe you live in an apartment. I think some people were saying that you're in an apartment. So you're in an apartment, but you really want to have your homestead or something. So that is a part where, okay, no, we're going to make it our goal. We're going to have this vision come to fruition at some point in time. So the next portion of it is catalyzing change. So this is initiate, manage, and lead change. So catalyzing is when you have a situation where you're kind of going along this way, and then the catalyst is something that kind of diverts it into another direction. So it's being able to see, okay, here's where the change needs to happen, and here's where how we're going to take care of it. This is our step by step. Like, this is step one or phase one. This is phase two, phase three, phase four. Maybe you're in an apartment now, but we're going to save up this much money, and then we're going to start looking, once we get to a certain dollar amount. Now we're going to start looking and seeing, like, where can we settle down and have that homestead. Okay. The next part, so we only have 3 left, so we're doing really good. Um, so the next part of this, oh, no, sorry, we have 4, is building bonds. So this is nurturing, maintaining relationships, cultivating a network, a wide network, and connecting with others on a deep level. So building bonds, it could be you, having an email stream. It could be you having, uh, an Instagram where you're sharing a lot of information with people. It could be, in a work relationship. It's meeting with your people one on one, meeting with your departments, in a group, regularly, so that you're always, connected to them. There's no disconnect. There's always talk about what's happening. So if there's a change in where things are going, everyone is aware of that, instead of, everyone trying to, figure out, like, okay, where are we going? What am I doing? Um, and kind of hitting roadblocks. We're still able to continue, working through the next portion of where we want to go. So we have teamwork and collaboration. So this is working with others. Like, how are you at working with others? So obviously, you'd want everyone to be working together to, go into wherever that vision is for your family or for your workplace. Um, this is another one where these are a lot of courses that you're going to take regularly, where you're either having to work with a lot of different, personalities, and how are you going to work with all these personalities? Are you open to hearing what they have to say? So are you exhibiting that empathy? Are you hearing, um, where they're coming from? Are you able to assess, like, what their skills are, where they're best suited in a group situation, so that the team can work together? And if there's people that need to collaborate, that, you can match those people together, and really foster this beautiful teamwork situation. It's pretty common, maybe not so much now. I've noticed that the workplace is shifted from being, um, more in person, and or less in person and more like on social media situations. So, think, what's that one called? I know I have Microsoft Teams, but there's another one. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a really common work one, where people can have video conferencing. It's kind of like Zoom, where they can have video conferencing, or they can chat, they can share, data over, the Teams or whatever the collaboration social media site or application that they're using. So, it's kind of shifted a little bit from 2019 to 2022. And so, because of that, we're looking at a different work environment altogether. So sometimes it just doesn't, feel feel the same as, like, being in an office where you're working together with people. But it still works. These technologies are still here to help assist, getting, that vision together. Um, okay, so second to the last one is coaching and mentoring others. So this is identifying others' development needs and bolster their abilities. So you're working on that in that collaboration and teamwork environment, but, you're also looking at, okay, this is where they're at. If I have them, take this course, they're going to be able to accelerate that ability, and it's going to be very worth it. Um, this doesn't necessarily have to be in the workplace. This can be like personal situations. Maybe you notice that about yourself. Like, I'm working in this environment, and if I took this course, maybe it would help me to better work with this person or this team, or better work with others. Um, and mentoring is really important. Um, when I was younger, I was like 17, 18. Oh no, I was older. Okay. I was probably like 20, 21. I had an instructor at my college. She was one of my instructors. She ended up becoming one of my mentors. And so I would check in with her periodically of, here's what's going on. And she would give me whatever advice. And it was super helpful to have her as a mentor. Somebody that I can just say, okay, here's the career ideas that I have. What do you think about where I'm going? What do you think where do you think I could take this? Is it worth it? And so it was really nice having somebody that was experienced in business or whatever the situation is. It's always nice to have somebody that's experienced in whatever or wherever you want to go to give you some advice. It's very helpful. It almost is a boost into wherever you can go. Okay. And then the last one is building trust. So this is trustworthy and ethical. This is building bonds of trust. So trust is super important, not just for yourself, but trusting others to be able to believe that those people are going to take you into a more fruitful place, that they're going to um, be able to collaborate with you, that you're going to have this really strong team. And I think we all really want people that we can trust in our lives. It's very difficult to go through your life without trusting others. um, oh my gosh, there's lots of comments. uh, that's my vision: get out of our apartment and into a home with some land. Absolutely, that's like a, I think there's pros and cons to it, because obviously I'm renting now and I used to be a homeowner. So, but I would prefer it to be this way, because I didn't want to have anything really tying me down. So, but just have your vision, whatever it is, and just really think about what that looks like. Because um, while I wanted a house and to have an ability um, to having an ability to have my own homestead, or even if it was an urban homestead, I thought that that was what I wanted for the longest time, and so I worked really, really hard to do that. But I come to realize, like, the grass isn't always greener um, on the other side. So just really think about what that looks like and how much work goes into it. And if you're up for it, then that's great. But just do realize that it does shift a lot of these things. Like, it's just have that be a part of the vision. Um, and really, like, explore people that have done that same thing. So I think that there's a lot of people on YouTube that would tell you, yeah, like, I did that, or they're actively doing it now. And so really being in tune with um, where you want to go and finding people, that's where that mentoring comes in. Having those people that have done it give you advice along the way. So one crazy example is living in an RV versus having an apartment. So having an apartment, you have certain amenities, and yeah, you can't move it anywhere and take it anywhere, but you can with an RV. But there's like pros and cons to both of them. So just because it sounds romantic and ideal and like whatever, having an RV and living the RV life has certain pros and cons to it, versus like having a house has certain pros and cons to it. Earlier today, I was watching um, an IG live that people were saying, "Oh yeah, I have," um, like, a lot of people. we're doing this craze of having the um, shipping container houses, and there's pros and cons to that, and so just like looking at all this alternative housing, I think is a great way to show that um, we really need to like look at what the vision is, what that's going to look like, and am I able to manage it? And there's lots of people that will be feel free to share those that information with you. I will live a stream. Bye, Bajo. Better get tuning up with Bigfoot. Kind of notebook are you using? I just took notes, so I didn't take any. I don't have a notebook. I have trust issues. So this is really like a personal self-assessment. It's not necessarily um like trusting it's not developing those things in others. It's like being able to recognize those things and how your approach is to whether or not that person wants to um undergo whatever development that you're seeing, like, oh, you're really good at this, and so I did this with one of the girls that I work with. I was working with her, and she had mentioned that she wanted to make more money, and I was like, okay, well, let's get your resume together. Let's apply to a new position so that you can work on that. So we sat there, and I was like, okay, well, here's from what you're telling me. Here's where you're excelling. This is where your abilities are. This is where you're gifted. And are those things that you can apply to this position? And how can you do that? And so we really worked on that was part of my mentoring or coaching with her is helping her see what her abilities are from my perspective. So I was able to voice it to her, and she was bolstered, like, oh my gosh, I have these abilities. I didn't even recognize that. Or I haven't been utilizing all the things that I really enjoy about the things that I've um, done in my life. And so that was a way of sort of collaborating with her and helping her to see where she's going. And in that, because I did it in a loving way, it was, she developed more trust for me. So now she knows she can come to me and talk about those things. Okay. Um, we had a hamster homestead. Uh, Yeah, if hamsters made eggs, that would be cool. Let's see. I do want an RV mobile home. We have a toy hauler now for camping. Yeah, toy haulers are great. They have got a lot of space. Um, all right. All right. So Carrie says, bye all. I need to go to bed. Keep doing these streams. You're amazing. I I love you. I'll see you later. Um, all right. Well, so kind of going back on this, so these are all of the portions of what it looks like to be have emotional intelligence. Um, like I said, it is an emerging thing that people are kind of focusing a little bit more on, and I think that now that um, we're kind of moving into this newer economy, that you're going to start seeing these things a lot more. So having really honest and firm self-assessment knowledge and management abilities of your own emotions is going to be super important. We talked about knowing what your strengths and limits are, being able to control your impulses, maintaining that high standard of ethics, and um, using creativity, like these are all tied together. So, um, one situation can use probably all of them, and then another situation could use a portion of them. It just depends on like who you're working with. If it's just with yourself, then it's one person, and maybe you can talk with somebody else about some of the things that you're having issues with, which is important when you're dealing with others. And then obviously the things that you show to others, you can gain from them as well. Um, a, l- a lot of this sounds really intense when we're talking about visions and goals and where we want to be in the future. And yeah, that's really important. But just really remember not to push yourself too hard to where you don't have the energy and start putting these things aside and not honoring them um, and really going into this burnout situation. So burnout is, like I said, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's having all of these it's having all of these in place and being able to, oh my word. Um, I'm gonna find this. I found a really cool thing for you guys. Let's see if I can find it again. It was really cool. I said I would talk about it. Let me find it. It was emotion. Okay. Okay. So we went over all of the emotional intelligence things. So self and others. It's 13 self, 13 others. And so we talked a little bit about negotiation and how it's important for you to have personal power. So you can have professional power and have like really good spend and have these relationships with people, but then being able to negotiate personal power, like I said, when you're buying a house, buying a car, um, getting a job, leaving a job, asking for a raise, uh, uh, all of these things are really important. And I found this really cool, I don't want to call it a meme because it really isn't, but it just it it spoke to what I was saying. So 21 skills that will pay you forever. And I can't see all the 21, so I'll just read the ones that I can. So the ability to sell and negotiate, the ability to convey what you think and feel, the ability to break a process down into smaller steps, the ability to shut up, listen, and learn from others, the ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome obstacles, the ability to read, understand, and memorize, the ability to walk away, the ability to manage time effectively, the ability to stay positive and optimistic, the ability to speak in front of a large audience, the ability to keep trying even after failure, the ability to invest money on your own, the ability to do things irrespective of the situation, the ability of self analysis, the ability to learn how, the ability to understand what others feel, the ability to remain consistent, the ability to master your thoughts, and the ability to write words to persuade and influence others. And there's two of them that I couldn't read because it's cut off on the thing. But these are all like skills that we kind of talked about a little bit here in the emotional intelligence portion of what we were doing. I explained many of them like to length, but really it does pay to have these things. It does help you in work, and a lot of places, especially corporate companies, will pay their employees to take these courses so that they strengthen themselves. They want people to really, like, if you're feeling like, oh man, I'd really love to develop these things, but I don't have access to it. You can find courses, um, look at the course, say, I want to take this course, go to your boss. Hey, look at this course. It costs $200, but I would really like to take it. I feel like it would benefit me and my position here at work. And I don't know any boss that's going to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. No, we're not going to pay it. They do have budgets for people's personal self development. And in my experience, people that go to their boss um, to present this to them is way more beneficial than telling their employees that they need to take these courses. So it's a little like when you have that initiative, we were talking about that with the self management portion of managing your emotions, that initiative and that taking action, that bias for action portion of it. When you're able to look at that and implement it into what you're doing, implement it into bettering yourself as an employee, and letting them know that, hey, I really like working here. However, I'd really like to be challenged a little bit more, or I'd like to gain a little bit more knowledge. And maybe it's a practical thing like learning to advanced spreadsheets. Maybe it's learning whatever it could be. Really diving into where you can benefit and promote yourself uh, within work. Because, like I said, a lot of businesses, especially corporations, will have budgets and want their employees to take that initiative to tell them, hey, look, you're my boss. I know you care about my job. I care about it too. And here's how I want to continue developing myself. I'm not going to school, but I'd like to take this course. So, okay. All right. I don't have a scroll. Okay. Um, all right. Well, I've been going for an hour 45, and um you guys are just wilding out in the chat. So I really appreciate you guys sticking through this. I hope it was really helpful, that it gave you um, a little bit more knowledge into what emotional intelligence is. I think that emotional self awareness, like I said, is so important when it comes to um, t- tying into that, uh, like just different portions of your life, just having this emotional understanding of what how your feelings are. When you get upset or you start attacking others, like you're almost projecting that inward lifestyle out at them, and it's like. Um, I've really thought a lot about it, and I'm like, well, if they really feel that way about me, then that's fine. Does it necessarily mean that I'm going to be around those people? Probably not. Like, I'm not into being around negative people. And it's honoring that in myself and knowing that um, I have certain limits. And we talked about those certain limits. And so I love you guys. I hope this was beneficial, and I will see you guys next week. I have a topic picked out already, so I will see you guys next week on Thursday. Have a lovely New Year's, and I will chat with you later. Take care. Have a good night, guys.